G'day and Kaya, and welcome to the Australians Teach English podcast, the podcast by language learners with language learners for language learners. My name is Glenn, and I'm the owner of Australians Teach English. And if you want to support this podcast and have an input in the creative process, then you can go to patreon.com/Australians Teach English. And today's guest, well, we have a bit of a funny story together. She is now living in one of my favorite places in the world, especially at this time of the year, at the end of May, start of June, in the top end. Maria, welcome to the show. Maria.
Hello, Glenn. How are you?
I'm well, thank you very much. I'm well. So we have a little bit of an interesting story. Just before you were coming to Australia a little bit more than a year ago, you sent me a message, didn't you?
Yes, it was funny because I think I don't remember how we met online, but
You sent me a message.
Yeah, I sent you a message. Yeah, I remember because I follow the Cachai Australia podcast. They interview you, and that's how I started to follow you on Instagram. And I think I told you that I was going to Australia. And one story is that we met at the airport. We had the same flight in Santiago de Chile. So yeah, from
That's
that
right.
day, I think we kept talking.
That's right. So you sent me a message, but then we realized actually we might be on the same flight to go to Australia, or well, at least to New Zealand. I think we ended up being on the same flight, and so we ended up meeting in the airport in Santiago, in Chile. And we've kept in touch ever since. And I said to you then, you're gonna definitely have to come on my podcast, and eventually you have. So I'm very happy to have you here. And I'm been looking very jealously at your photos on Instagram and everywhere else about your journeys and your experiences, because you haven't just been in the big cities in Australia. You basically have spent 90% of your time in faraway places in the regions, which I think is fantastic. So tell us a little bit about where you went when you first arrived in Australia, where you've lived, and what you've done.
Yes, well, I first arrived in Melbourne. I stayed there for a few weeks, and I really needed to extend my visa for the 88 days. So I just like kind of playing with the Seek app, applying to the jobs. Somebody answered me from Townsville. That was my first place when I started to work there. And yeah, it said Townsville. I don't know where it was, and I look on the map, and it was in Queensland, of course. And I just wanted like a really nice place, not so famous, because everybody goes to Sydney or Brisbane. And it's okay, why not Townsville? A few people didn't want that for example, a lot of people didn't want that I go, they were asking me, why are you going to Townsville? And I was like, no, because I found a job there and I can do my extension. Okay. But they didn't say the real reason why Townsville is not like I mean, for me it was a good place, but they had
I think I sort of gave you a little bit of a caution about Townsville, didn't I? I said you'll understand when you get there. So what?
I didn't understand, but at the end I understood how Townsvillians, I don't know if they have
Townsvillians,
Townsvillians.
So it is a bit of a different place. How is Townsville different from a lot of different places in Australia?
Yeah, I think it's completely different, but I kind of understand more or less how it's like a Queenslander kind of, but the Townsville person is so different.
How is a Queenslander? Are they racist and they can't spell their name? Is that how a Queenslander is?
No, but the Queenslander is more like he or she likes to go fishing, yeah, they kind of very simple people. But for me, when I stay in Townsville, they were so welcoming and getting to know foreign people as well. But yeah, because in my case, I just stay in a hotel working as a housekeeper.
Hmm.
But yeah, in general, I really enjoy my time there, near the beach with other friends. Um, and I stayed longer than I expected. I thought to stay there like 3 months because only for my visa. And I stayed at the end 5 months
Hmm.
because I had all my friends, my Chilean friends and Argentinian friends living with me, and we were having a good time. But yeah, I kind of I feel sounds feel like my little home
It's like your
because
second home now.
yes, my second home. So when I stayed there for 5 months and then I left to Perth, I kind of miss a little bit this lifestyle of a Queenslander. It's like so simple, going to the beach and enjoy their time. I don't know, going to bars or pubs, but it's like kind of simple life. And the
And
weather is so
yeah,
nice.
and we would call Queenslanders simple, definitely, as a nice way of putting it. But Townsville is a unique place because that has more what we would call AJs or army jerks or military people
Hmm.
in Townsville than perhaps a lot of other places in Australia. And so in Townsville, there is a lot of drinking. There is a lot of perhaps bad behavior. And so if something strange happens in the news, in Australia, it often happens in Townsville. So you can think about like the strange stories in the United States where Florida man does something stupid. Well, in Australia, it's basically Townsville man. A person from Townsville has done something really, really silly because they got drunk and whatever. So that is kind of our stereotype of Townsville.
Yes. And then I think you said this is Bougainville.
Bougainville.
And I understood that because of that, because they drank too much alcohol and there were crazy people on the street sometimes. Even I didn't know if also um I found Aboriginal people, but not so much in the city center of Townsville. Just a few ones outside the supermarkets
Where you are now in Catherine, in the top end in the Northern Territory,
as well.
you
Yeah,
will
I've seen.
find many more, and on a daily basis, you will be interacting with Indigenous people.
Yeah, but in
Guaranteed.
Townsville it was my first contact with Aboriginal people.
Hmm.
And now here I work with them, and some of them are really nice
Mm,
and they are really good at their jobs.
mm,
So I'm
absolutely.
surprised.
The big positive with Townsville and areas like these regions, like in far north Queensland or the York Peninsula, like or Cape York, sorry, that there is always lots of jobs. So for someone coming to Australia on a working holiday visa, would you recommend just diving in, going to one of these faraway places to get experience to save some money?
Definitely, because in the remote areas, you can work more hours, you save more money, and also you get in touch with all this other culture. The Aboriginal people is, I mean, I have talked with them, and it's really interesting how they have this vision of of life. In general, they don't have much like expectation. For example, I was talking with a girl who works in the Boat River, and she said to me that her expectation of life is more or less 50 years, and she's 29, and so it's like it's kind of sad hearing that because I mean, they have a simple life. They work long time here, but you kind of learn how they are, and
Mm.
for me it's a bit moving to hear these stories. But besides that, um, you learn a lot being away from everything. It's kind of you get used to this lifestyle. so quiet. You just work and focus on the to do your visa, the days for your visa. But honestly, I really enjoy being here. Um,
Very
it's
good.
a new experience, a really new experience.
Very good. So a lot of people when they first get to Australia, they think, oh yes, I'm just gonna go to Melbourne and I'm just gonna go to Sydney and I'm just gonna get used to the accent and understand our English. And then I'll think about everything else after that. But you went the opposite way. You just went, nah, I'm just gonna go straight out into the middle of nowhere and start work. So what do you think were the advantages of that and what were the disadvantages do you think of doing that?
Um, the advantages, well, you meet new people, of course. Um, People from different parts of Australia as well. And it also is a good opportunity for you to tell about your culture. That I'm like this. I mean, I tell about everything about Chile, what we do in our everyday. Um, so in general, that would be the advantages. Like, okay, you stay far away from everything, you save money. But the other thing will be the weather. So it's completely different to the big cities.
Mm-hmm.
Here's summer all year. The big cities in this time of the year is winter, rain, so cold. But here's the opposite. So I really enjoy this kind of weather, even though we have now a few degrees. I mean, crazy degrees. For me, it's fine.
You're acclimatizing to the tropical weather.
Yes,
You're making me very jealous. I lived in the top end in Darwin for 4 years and yeah, this time of year there is no better place in the world than in the north of Australia. It doesn't matter where you are. I don't think in terms of weather that is perfect. Yeah,
yeah.
couldn't get any better.
After that, you get used to this tropical weather, and when you go back to Sydney or Melbourne, you really feel the cold.
Yeah, you
So
freeze
it's
your
like,
ass
okay, I
off.
really need, yeah, so I
I'm
really need to
I
be,
made the mistake a couple of times when I was living in Darwin to go to Melbourne in the middle of the year in winter, and it was the worst.
actually, a lot of people from Victoria come here, and also people from Tasmania. So it's like all of these people who lives in now that is winter in those cities. Yeah, they enjoy here. They stay 2 weeks, 3 weeks,
Six
and then
months.
really, yeah. I mean,
So
I actually the customers who stay here in the camping or in the cabins, they stay.
so what you're experiencing now is a phenomenon called the grey nomads. So because it is warm in wintertime in the north of Australia and it's freezing cold in the southern places in Australia, what a lot of the retirees do is they go traveling to the north of Australia in winter when it is
Yeah,
warm. And so we call these people the grey nomads. And of course, for 6 months of the year in places like the top end or far north Queensland, there is lots of work because there are lots more tourists. And then when the wet season starts, then they all leave. And so there isn't as much work and when there are less tourists. So the north of Australia has this interesting dynamic in regards to this. But you
and
are
also the
now,
backpackers.
yeah,
They
and
also backpackers
exactly.
flew through here and all Port Douglas, Cairns, Townsville, all this part of Far North Queensland is crowded. It's like impossible to live there because all of the backpackers are here now. So
Yeah, on the Cassowary coast. So
yes,
so so where you were living in the Cassowary coast in North Queensland, close to the Cape York, or yeah, Cape York.
almost yeah, near the entry forest. I mean,
Hmm.
after leaving Townsville, I went to Perth to know how was there. But I really enjoyed because I had this feeling, okay, Queensland is my place. I really enjoyed it
Mm,
there. I came back I had some friends in Port Douglas. So okay, I flew to Cairns and then I took a van to Port Douglas and I stayed there for another 3 or 4 months.
very
And I
good.
really like it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like something, it's so green, the nature. I really enjoyed the land,
Did you see any
nature.
cassowaries while you were there?
No, I didn't have the chance to see because we went to different parts of Port Douglas, to the entry and also near Cairns where we do we visited some waterfalls. No, we didn't see any of the cassowaries. You are lucky when you see one of those.
Yeah, but I think it's sort of being a bit lucky or being a bit unlucky. Can you explain what a cassowary is for our listeners out there?
Okay, my own words. The cassowary is this how can I explain? Aging bird. I don't know if it's like a dinosaur, but
Looks like a dinosaur, doesn't it?
it's like a dinosaur. It's like bluish. It's kind of ostrich, but bigger, blue colored.
And
I
with
don't.
and with the claws like a velociraptor.
Yes.
Yeah.
So some people say that it's better to not get in touch. I
Yeah,
mean, not to be so
absolutely.
close from them because it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, depend of the people who because I had some friends who are now in Port Douglas and they saw the cassowary and they just stay there near the beach and or it was just crossing the street. It's like they have very lucky
Yeah, as long
to
as they're over there somewhere and not near and not coming towards me, then that's okay. But if they started walking towards me, I would be very concerned. Yeah, I would not be I would not be very, very happy at all. Yeah. And
but I
probably
have
won't.
seen more koalas than cassowaries.
Yeah. What about drop bears? Have you seen any drop bears?
No.
Uh,
Actually, a few days ago, I learned about that. It's like a myth,
the
or is
drop
it real? The
drop
drop
bears.
bear.
Yeah, if you ever see a drop bear, it's too late. They've already got you. You're done.
Ah, I don't know
So
here if I can find drop
no, there
bears.
there there are no drop bears in Catherine. So tell us a little bit about where you are living and what you are doing now.
Well, where I'm living is specifically in Nitmiluk National Park. It's 30 minutes south from Catherine. It's
Catherine.
south.
Hmm.
Yeah. And no, this place is amazing. I have seen some of the gorges here. Um, I really recommend it. And also I have um I have known more of this place by taking the helicopter flights.
Yeah, I saw that the other day. What
Yeah,
what what did you think of that?
I mean it's a really nice because you mostly understand how is this place. I mean it's kind of magical, um so important for the Wyoming people, the
Hmm.
Aboriginal people, and it's one of the most, I don't know if the most touristic places here near the Torrent territory, but I really like it here. I mean,
Yeah, it's one of the main
first
centers
time,
for
yeah,
tourism
first
in the.
time getting to know this place because I didn't know anything about it. I know
So
that Kakadu and Litchfield
mm,
are very important national parks, but this one now is getting more busy
yeah, so
here.
so Litchfield National Park and Kakadu National Park are probably two of Australia's most well-known national parks, and they're accessible from Darwin. So people will often fly into Darwin, go to Kakadu, go to Litchfield National Park, and that's their top end experience. But if you can get a little bit further south to Nipmuc National Park, or Catherine Gorge, that's the same thing, then it is definitely worthwhile doing. There are often less people, and so that makes it much more attractive as well. And even a little bit further south than Catherine, you get to a place called Mataranka and Mataranka
Yes,
Hot Springs, which is one of my most favorite places in Australia as well.
actually, a lot of people ask here how to get to Mataranka, and I haven't. I need to do it. I mean, I have already visited the Catherine Hot Springs, and of course here. But yeah, I think Mataranka and Eddie Falls is a must to
Yeah,
visit here.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. If you are in the Northern Territory, then visiting Mataranka and Catherine
Mhm.
Gorge are basically mandatory. Basically mandatory. And yeah, so a lot of people want to go and work in the top end at this time of year, but often people arrive too late, and so people are trying to find work now in the top end and can't do it. So you have managed to secure work in the top end. So how did you go about doing it? And what is your advice for someone that does want to go and work in the top end?
Well, first of all, be sure. Sorry about that noise. Okay, first of all, be sure that you apply to these jobs 2 or 3 months earlier, because I more or less I sent an email in the middle of February, and after 2 weeks, more or less, they answered me. Sorry, do you hear this noise?
No, it's all good.
Okay, because here in the kitchen we have a insect trap, so it makes a noise. Okay, so yeah, I mean, to be prepared and apply as soon as possible. I mean, at least 2 months or 3 months before, because here we have a problem with the internet. So most of the time we don't have any reception, and also it's so busy. I mean, when I check the email, for example, it's long emails. I mean,
Mm.
from 2 or 3 days not answering. So if someone wants to apply here to this job, they need to be prepared and have time,
They need to be
patience.
organized and do it
Yeah,
early. Yeah.
yeah.
And
Actually,
so
the website, they can apply on the website as well, but it takes time to have an answer from here, because now it's getting busy.
yeah. And
And
so when people are looking at working in Australia, coming to Australia, or once they are in Australia, then looking for their next place to go, what would your advice be? Would it be to wait until you're moving somewhere to apply for jobs, or should you apply for a job a month, 2 months, 3 months in advance? What would be your advice?
in my case, I try to be disorganized when I get to Melbourne, and I just apply whatever job in hospitality I can
Mm-hmm.
find. But and I realized that I mean, moving to the place you want to work, for example, in my case, it was Townsville. I realized that you can find a job the same day, so it's not necessary. It depends on
Yeah, Townsville is
your,
probably a bit unusual with that, though, I would say.
yeah. But now I definitely recommend that. Okay, in the place where you are, try to apply as many jobs as you can, and then move to the place you want to work.
Mm.
Because it depends. I mean, in my case, it was just luck. I don't know, but some other people
Yeah,
get in.
I think there are some sort of exceptions to this. Like, for example, Townsville, you can probably go there and find a job, but you can't do that in Cairns, for example. That's not
No,
that wouldn't be possible because there are so many people already there looking for jobs. And so it is generally better advice to look in advance. So you've been in a couple of different regions of Australia. You're in the top end right now, and you've been on the Cassowary Coast in Queensland. We're going to talk about the different colloquial region names of parts of Australia. So in the Northern Territory, there are more regions than this, but probably the two main regions in the Northern Territory are the top end, and what else in terms of touristy regions would we call the other big place in the Northern Territory? That's probably further south of Mataranka. Would you be able to name that touristy place, that touristy region?
Alice Springs?
Well, it
No?
does include Alice Springs and Uluru and Tennant Creek and all these places around it.
Okay, you
It's
got
a
me. I
name.
really don't
That's the red center. So in the Northern Territory, we have the top end and we have the red center, and so that includes Uluru and Alice Springs and all the rest. And if we go in a clockwise direction around Australia from the north, we have the top end, and then what region do we have after that?
Western Australia, the
No,
desert,
the other way.
the
Go
other way
east. Go east.
is
So we have Gulf country. Why is it called Gulf country?
I don't know.
Because it's the Gulf of Carpentaria, so it's called Gulf country. And then
Yeah, I see
yeah,
it now.
yeah. And then what do we have?
The Cape Town? No.
Yeah, Cape
Yeah,
York. Yep,
Cape.
York. Yep, or far north Queensland. And then we get
Mhm.
into the Cassowary Coast, like we've spoken about with Port Douglas, Cairns, Townsville. And as we go further south down Queensland, can you think of some of the regions? Some of our listeners probably actually live in these regions and are certainly working and familiar
Yeah.
with these regions.
Oh,
What do we have further south of the Cassowary Coast?
Brisbane, Gold Coast,
So we have the
Newcastle.
Gold Coast. Further north of the Gold Coast in Brisbane, we have what we call the Sunshine Coast.
Mm-hmm.
So from the Sunshine Coast all the way up to far north Queensland, you can get out to the Great Barrier Reef quite easily from these places. And then south of Brisbane, we have the Gold Coast. South of the Gold Coast, what do we have? Do you know what region we have?
New South Wales.
It is New South Wales, but what are some of the regions in New South Wales that people might know?
For more south?
Yeah.
No?
So we have
Yeah.
what we call the Northern Rivers region, and
Oh,
there's a famous place with tourists and backpackers there.
yeah. Byron
by
Bay.
Byron Bay. Good. And so then we have the Central Coast, and we have Sydney, and then further south of Sydney, this is also one of my favorite places in Australia. Do you know what we have there?
Canberra.
Well, yeah, we have the south coast of New South Wales. So this is some places like Mollymook and Bateman's Bay, and some really, really, really beautiful places that people should go and visit. And then once we cross the border from New South Wales into Victoria, we have the Gippsland coast, or Gippy. We have Melbourne, and then we have the Great Ocean region. Yeah,
Yeah, did
yeah,
I did Great Ocean Road.
exactly.
It's
So,
amazing.
and then inland in Victoria, you have beautiful regions like the different ranges and the different valleys, and some quite beautiful inland kind of regions. Once we move into South Australia, we've got the York and Eyre Peninsula, and we also have the Murray-Darling areas and so on, and the Eucla coast with the Nullarbor Plain as well. And then once we cross into Western Australia, we have the southern coast, we have the southwest Capes, we have the wheat belt, we have the gold fields, obviously because there's lots of gold there. The wheat
Mm.
belt is because we grow a lot of wheat there. And then we have the Gascoyne and the Coral Coast. And then once we get up into the sort of closer to the Northern Territory again, we have the Kimberley, which is also where lots of people will be familiar with as well. So basically from Broome to the Northern Territory to the top end, we consider to be the Kimberley. So what's next on your agenda after working in Catherine?
Well, I hope flying to Sydney to spend the holidays there, because I will stay 6 months here and probably until December, but I'm
Ooh,
not
you're
quite
you're
sure
you're
yet.
you're you're going to suffer in December or November.
Yeah, it's kind of complicated, but I will see how is my itinerary. But yeah, I really want to visit Sydney. So all these big cities I have put it aside, because of course everybody goes there. But yeah, I want to see how I will manage my next destination. But it's just an idea. I don't know if I will.
So have you
I will
actually been to Sydney yet?
No, no,
Wow.
just I mean, I just had a stop in Sydney when last year when I was coming to Australia, but just one stop and I stay in the airport, and then I arrived to Melbourne and I stay there. So I haven't had the chance to visit Sydney
Wow.
and the
So
opera
you
house
so you
and
must be just about you must be just about the only backpacker that stayed for more than a year and hasn't visited
yeah.
Sydney. So congratulations. Well done on doing things a little bit of a different way.
Yeah,
So
every time I visit a new place in Australia is every the more I visit Australia, the more I'm fell in love with this country, because it's so different one region from the other, and yeah, you kind of get used to it, and I really like it. I mean, I hope to visit all Australia next year as well.
so so you were talking before the show a little bit about, you have some decisions to make and planning and so on. Have you got an idea of what you're going to do next apart from visiting Sydney?
Um, well, I want to see the option to talk with an um, immigration
Mm-hmm.
law, or try to see the how, because I'm a translator professionally. I mean, I have my degree,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I don't know here in Australia how are the steps to follow to become a certified translator.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I don't want to think it's impossible, but I know it takes time, and I really want to, okay, from now on, start thinking what I'm going to do next, because after this working holiday, I don't have anything. So I really want to see the opportunity
But I think
to
that is
find.
a really a good thing to be thinking about, because often people get to the end of their third year and
Mm-hmm.
they say, "Oh, I really want to stay, but I haven't planned anything." Whereas you are sort of just over a year into your journey here, and you're starting to think about, okay, well, what is it that I actually want? And so if there are any changes that you have to make, then you've got time to be able to actually do it, or you've got time to be able to save money for what it is that you want to
Yes.
do. But if you're already in your third year, then it's really difficult to actually do this. And I know this is something that I say a lot, repeat myself, and it's the same with the guys on Catch Eye as well, that having a plan, if you actually want to stay in Australia, is super important, because otherwise you can get yourself in a little bit of a hole. You might run out of money, or you might actually realize that you can't do what it is that you wanted to do. So
Yes.
as a translator, uh, what are some of more difficult things that you've had to think about translating when it comes to Australian English?
Actually, well, when I speak to Australians, well, for me, it's I'm still struggling with the accent because sometimes I don't understand a word. Really, it's for me talking to Australians every day here and working at the reception is a challenge every day.
Yeah. But it's probably also
But
the best way to learn.
yes,
So
but
there are no tips, there are no cheats that you can give to anyone. Any hacks?
hacks to understand Australians.
Yeah.
Just ask over and over again. Okay, what
What are you
because
saying?
do you mean like
No, no, no.
how to,
That's what you would ask. That's what you would ask Australians. What are you actually saying?
yeah.
And how do Australians
I
respond?
say sorry, come again. I don't don't understand. And I thought, well, my colleagues are most of them are from Tasmania, others are from Catherine,
Mm-hmm.
even from here. So yeah, um, mostly every day I'm trying to understand a bit more, and yeah, it's a challenge really.
So you have, but it's a challenge, but you have some good support there with you.
Yes, yes, they know that I'm not from here, that of course my English completely different. I mean, because when I study English in Chile, or American or
Or
British,
British,
not
exactly.
Australian. So
And
when you come here, it's a new.
certainly not the Northern Territorian where we speak like this, where we don't open our mouths and things like this. So that
Yeah.
is obviously a big challenge. So what has it's only been what 2 months or something since you've been working in Catherine, and I think when you arrived there, it was still raining, and I said, "Ooh, it
At the
might be
beginning, yes, it
yeah."
was raining, but now it's the dry season. So
Yeah. So you've actually got the absolute best of the top end in that little period which starts raining and then it starts to dry out and the dry season comes on. So if you could summarize what it's like living in the top end, how would you describe it?
in one word,
In one word,
it's
if you want to.
like being in have you seen the Lion King movie? Okay, it's like
Yes.
this. For me, it's like being in a completely different place, um, enjoying the. I feel like this place is like unique, so it's kind of magical, and now I understand how these people is. They have like a lot of respect of nature, so it's like I really I would summarize it like magical, quiet, and you I don't know the word in English, but it's like when you are in the place, it's like you start getting um understanding of what you're living in, you know? So that's how I would describe it.
So magical is the word that I took
Magical.
from,
It's
but
like
it
I
is,
cannot believe I'm here in this
mm,
place so far away.
but it is interesting that you'd sort of describe it like the Lion King because it is actually what we would call a tropical savanna. So
Yes.
it is actually sort of what we would call in the seasonal tropics, just like in places like Kenya where the Lion King is set. So for 6 months of the year you have the wet season, and then for 6 months of the year you have the dry season. So the conditions are very similar to what people would be thinking about going and looking at lions and zebras and things like that in Africa. It's like that except without the lions and the zebras. Instead, you've got crocodiles. That's really
Crocodile,
the crux.
wallabies.
Yeah, and then
And I'm waiting to see the wallabies here and
the
more
rock.
animals.
Yeah, lots of rock wallabies in that region as well. So yeah. So I wish you good luck towards the end of this year because you will be experiencing what we call the build up in the lead up to the the wet season, you'll be experiencing the mango madness of going crazy with 100% humidity and the 40-degree temperatures.
So
That is definitely not something that I miss from living in the top end, but I definitely do miss getting very, very cheap mangoes. That is something that I definitely miss. So you can make the most of that when it comes along. But it's been great having you on the show and having a bit of a catch up and talking about the different regions in Australia and your favorite. Well, actually, I haven't asked you what your favorite region is in Australia. So let's do that before we go.
honestly, yeah, Queensland is my favorite region.
So
Um,
the Townsville, Port Douglas,
I would
Cairns
say
area.
I loved more Port Douglas than Townsville because I
Mhm.
was kind of um how can I say, kind of I felt like kind of fell in love with Townsville at the beginning because it was the first place with beach and nice weather. So when I get to Port Douglas, I discover a really new place. And yeah, I would say most of the far north Queensland, Port Douglas, Cairns, it was my favorite.
Yes.
So I remember
Yeah.
it with so much love because I had a great time in Queensland.
Yes, it was your first love. Hard to beat.
Yeah,
And and so yes, in the Port Douglas area, we have what we call the Daintree Rainforest. And yes, that is
but
definitely worth the visit. And you can go up the hill in the cable car and have a look around, and it is a really beautiful area. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But yes, it's been fantastic having you on and talking about the different
thank
the
you
diff,
so much.
the different regions in Australia. So from us here at the Australians Teach English podcast, the podcast by language learners, with language learners, for language learners, it's us saying goodbye. Nos vemos.
Nos vemos. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
For more information about the Australians Teach English Institute, go to australiansteachenglish.com or follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Australians Teach English.